My daughter has been missing for 10 years until she called my phone out of the blue. I don't talk about what happened on September 14th, 2014. I try not to think about it either. That was the day my daughter Lily disappeared. She was 7 years old, wearing her favorite purple backpack with the butterfly patch, walking the 3 blocks from our house to Riverside Elementary like she did every morning. Except that morning, she never made it to school. The crossing guard didn't see her. None of the other kids remembered her on the sidewalk. She vanished between our front door and the school entrance, and for 10 years, I lived with that void. Everyone in our town knew the story. Local news covered it for months. My face became synonymous with tragedy. The father who lost his little girl, the man who organized search parties and hung missing posters and never gave up hope even when the police quietly closed the case. I became an advocate for missing children, speaking at conferences, consulting on other cases, building a whole identity around being the parent who survived the unsurvivable. That's what everyone saw. The devoted father still searching. Nobody knew the truth about what really happened that September morning. 3 days ago, I was sorting through old photos for a presentation at a Missing Children's Foundation event when my phone rang. The number was blocked. Unknown caller. Probably spam. I almost didn't answer because I was late for the venue setup, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" I said, already irritated, ready to hang up on whatever robocall was about to waste my time. There was silence at first, just faint breathing, then a voice that made my blood freeze. "Daddy?" It was small, uncertain, exactly how Lily sounded when she was scared or confused. "Daddy, it's me. It's Lily. I need help." My hand started shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't possible. Lily was gone. I knew she was gone because I'd been there that morning. I'd watched her walk toward school. I'd made sure she'd never arrive. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice coming out harsh, defensive. "Stop calling this number. This isn't funny." I hung up before the voice could respond, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. The next morning, my phone rang again at exactly 6:47 a.m., the same time Lily used to leave for school. Another blocked number. I stared at the screen for 6 rings before answering, my mouth dry. "Daddy, please," the voice said immediately, desperate now, crying. "Please, I don't know where I am. It's dark and I'm scared and I just want to come home. Why won't you help me?" The voice was perfect, identical to my daughter's, down to the slight lisp she'd had from her loose front tooth that summer. But that was impossible. I'd made sure it was impossible. "Lily is dead," I said quietly, the words strange in my mouth after 10 years of carefully never saying them. "I don't know who you are or what you want, but you need to stop this right now." The voice on the other end started screaming. Not words, just this high-pitched, terrified sound that made me pull the phone away from my ear. Then it cut off abruptly, and the line went dead. I sat there for 20 minutes staring at the blank screen, trying to convince myself this was some sick prank. Maybe someone who'd seen the news coverage and decided to torment me. But the calls kept coming. Every morning at 6:47 a.m., the exact minute Lily used to leave for school. "Daddy, I'm so cold. Why did you leave me here? Daddy, I can't see anything. When are you coming to get me? Daddy, it hurts. Everything hurts so much." Each call was the same terrified pleading, the same impossible voice, and each time I tried to trace the number, I got nothing. Blocked, untraceable, like the calls were coming from nowhere. I stopped answering after the 5th call, let them go to voicemail, but then I'd see the notification and my hand would move on its own, playing the messages back, listening to that voice beg for help I couldn't give. My wife Audrey noticed I wasn't sleeping, asked if I was okay. If the upcoming anniversary of Lily's disappearance was hitting me harder than usual, I lied and said work was stressful, that the foundation was demanding more appearances, anything except the truth that our dead daughter was calling me every morning. On the 8th day of calls, I finally answered and said the thing I'd been holding back. "Lily can't call anyone because Lily drowned in Mercy Lake on September 14th, 2014. I know that for a fact because I was there. I watched her sink. The silence on the other end was so complete, I thought the call had dropped, but then I heard breathing, slow and deliberate. "I know, Daddy," the voice whispered, different now, colder. "I know what you did. I remember the rocks you tied to my ankles. I remember how you told me we were playing a game, seeing how long I could hold my breath underwater. I remember your hands on my shoulders, pushing me down every time I tried to come up for air. I remember everything." My vision tunneled, black spots dancing at the edges. "That's not possible," I said, but my voice cracked. "You drowned. You've been dead for 10 years. The voice laughed, and it didn't sound like my 7-year-old daughter anymore. It sounded ancient. "Wrong. Dead isn't the same as gone, Daddy. You should know that by now." I hung up and immediately called the police, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Detective Morrison, the same cop who'd worked Lily's original case, met me at my house within an hour. I showed him my call log, all the blocked numbers, tried to explain without explaining too much. "Someone is harassing me," I said. "Someone who knows about Lily, who's using her voice, who's trying to drive me crazy." Morrison looked at me with that patient expression cops get when they think you're losing it. "Mr. Whitmore, I understand the anniversary is coming up. These things can trigger false memories, stress hallucinations. Have you considered talking to someone? He meant a therapist. He thought I was having a breakdown. These calls are real, I insisted. Listen to the voicemails. But when I played them back on speaker, there was nothing. Just static, empty air, my own voice saying hello, and then silence. Morrison left after suggesting I take some time off, maybe see a doctor, get some rest. He didn't believe me, because there was nothing to believe. That night, the calls changed. Instead of mornings, my phone rang at 2:17 a.m., jerking me awake. I grabbed it without thinking, my heart already racing. "Daddy," Lily's voice said, but now I could hear water in the background, the sound of something dripping steadily. "Daddy, I'm so cold down here. The water is so cold and I can't get out. Why did you leave me at the bottom of the lake?" "Stop it," I whispered, glancing at Audrey sleeping beside me, praying she wouldn't wake up. "Whatever you are, whoever you are, just stop." The voice continued like I hadn't spoken. "I tried so hard to breathe, Daddy. I tried to push against your hands, but you were so much stronger. I remember looking up through the water and seeing your face watching me drown. You looked so calm. Why were you so calm?" I ended the call and turned my phone completely off, threw it across the room, buried my face in my pillow to muffle the sound of my breathing because I felt like I was drowning too, 10 years later, finally feeling what I'd done to her. The next morning, I found my phone on my nightstand, turned back on, with 17 missed calls from the same blocked number, 17 voicemails waiting. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't stop myself, each message worse than the last. Lily's voice describing the rocks pulling her down, the burning in her lungs, the moment she finally inhaled water and everything went dark. The messages were too detailed, too specific, described things only someone who'd been there could know. I was there. I knew exactly what she'd experienced because I'd watched every second, standing knee-deep in Mercy Lake that September morning, holding my daughter underwater until the bubbles stopped. The memory I'd buried for a decade was clawing its way back up, dragged to the surface by these impossible calls. By the 14th day, I stopped sleeping entirely. The calls came randomly now, no pattern, no predictability. Sometimes 3 times in an hour, sometimes nothing all day. Then suddenly my phone would ring at dinner or during a work meeting or while I was driving. Always that voice, always begging or accusing or describing her death in excruciating detail. Audrey finally confronted me one evening when she caught me staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring. "What's going on with you?" she demanded. "You're not sleeping, you're barely eating, you look like you've seen a ghost." She had no idea how accurate that assessment was. "I keep getting these calls," I admitted, showing her my call log. "Someone pretending to be Lily." Audrey's face went pale. "That's horrible. Have you reported it?" "The police think I'm having a breakdown," I said. "The voicemails don't record properly. When I play them back, there's nothing there." She reached for my phone, but I pulled it away instinctively. "Let me hear them," she insisted. So I played the most recent message on speaker, the one from an hour ago where Lily described the lake bottom, the way her body settled into the mud, how fish had picked at her for months before she finally rotted away completely. But what came through the speaker was just my own voice saying hello, then silence, then me breathing heavily like I was having a panic attack. "There's nothing there," Audrey said gently. "Honey, I think Morrison might be right. Maybe you need to talk to someone." I knew how it looked. Grief-stricken father, 10-year anniversary approaching, cracking under the weight of unresolved trauma. But I wasn't crazy. These calls were real, even if only I could hear them. That night, I decided to drive to Mercy Lake. If something was haunting me, if Lily's voice was somehow reaching me from wherever she'd ended up, maybe going back to where it happened would make it stop. Or maybe I'd finally lose my mind completely, and that would be its own kind of relief. The lake was 40 minutes outside town, surrounded by dense woods, the kind of place families used to picnic before a kid drowned there 10 years ago, and it became unofficially cursed. Nobody came here anymore. The parking area was overgrown with weeds, the trail to the water barely visible in the dark. I used my phone's flashlight to pick my way down to the shore, the same spot where I'd stood with Lily that morning. The water was black and still, reflecting nothing, like a hole in the world. My phone rang. Of course it did. "Hello, Lily," I said, because at this point, what else was there to say? "Daddy," her voice responded, but it sounded different now, closer somehow, like she was standing right next to me instead of coming through the phone. "Daddy, thank you for coming back. I've been waiting so long for you to come back." I spun around, shining my light across the empty shoreline, seeing nothing but trees and water and darkness. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I'm right here," she said. "I've always been right here. You left me at the bottom, Daddy. You tied those rocks to my ankles and pushed me under, and then you drove away like I was garbage you needed to hide. But I didn't stay hidden. I've been crawling out of this lake every night for 10 years, trying to find my way home, and you never came looking for me." The phone felt like ice in my hand. "You're not real," I said. "You're just my guilt. You're just my brain finally breaking from what I did." "Am I?" the voice asked, and then I heard it behind me, not through the phone but in the actual air, small and wet and wrong. I turned, and there she was, Lily, or what was left of Lily. She stood at the water's edge, dripping and pale, her purple backpack still on her shoulders, the butterfly patch faded and covered in algae. Her skin was bloated and gray, her eyes milky white, her mouth hanging open like she'd never stopped trying to scream for help. The rocks were still tied to her ankles, trailing ropes of rotted rope. She tilted her head, and water poured from her nose and mouth. "I've been calling and calling," she said, her voice a wet gurgle. "But you wouldn't come, so I had to come to you instead." I stumbled backward, my phone falling into the mud, its light pointing uselessly at the sky. "This isn't happening," I whispered. "You're dead. I killed you. You can't be here." Lily took a step forward, her waterlogged shoes squelching in the mud. "You did kill me, Daddy. You killed me because I found your other phone, the one you used to talk to Mommy's sister. I heard you tell Aunt Rachel that you loved her, that you were going to leave Mommy for her. I was 7, but I wasn't stupid. I knew that was bad. I knew Mommy would be so sad, and you knew I would tell her because I always told Mommy everything. So you took me to the lake that morning and you made sure I'd never tell anyone anything ever again." The words hit like physical blows, because she was right. That's exactly why. Lily had walked into my office and picked up my burner phone, had listened to me telling Rachel about our plans, and I'd seen the understanding in her innocent face. I'd panicked. I'd grabbed her hand and told her we were going on an adventure before school, driven to Mercy Lake, told her we were playing a game, and then I'd held her under until she stopped fighting. Nobody had suspected me. Why would they? I was the devastated father, the man who'd sent his daughter to school and never seen her again. I'd played my part perfectly. "I'm sorry," I choked out, falling to my knees in the mud. "God, Lily, I'm so sorry. I was scared and stupid and I made a terrible mistake. I've regretted it every single day for 10 years. The thing that looked like my daughter moved closer, until I could smell the rot and lake water coming off her. You don't regret it," she said. "You regret getting these calls. You regret being scared. You regret that I'm not staying buried where you left me. But you don't regret killing me, because you went on with your life. You became famous for being my grieving father. You married Mommy all over again like nothing was wrong. You built a whole career on my death. You used me." She was right about that too. The foundation, the speaking engagements, the consulting work, all of it had been built on the tragedy of my missing daughter. I'd turned her murder into a brand, into something that made me special and important. I was the dad who never gave up hope, who kept searching, who helped other families. Noble, inspiring, completely fake. "What do you want?" I asked, because that's always the question in these situations, isn't it? The ghost wants something, wants revenge or justice or closure. "I want you to tell the truth," Lily said. "I want you to tell everyone what you did to me. I want you to stop being a hero and start being what you really are. A murderer, a liar, a man who drowned his own daughter because she was inconvenient." "I can't," I said automatically. "If I tell the truth, I lose everything. My life, my freedom, Audrey, my reputation, everything I've built." Lily's bloated face somehow managed to smile. "You should have thought about that before you tied rocks to my ankles, Daddy. But you didn't think, did you? You just acted, and now you have to face what you did. Tell the truth, or I'll make sure you can't ignore me anymore. I'll appear in your bedroom. I'll show myself to Audrey. I'll stand behind you at your precious foundation events. I'll scream the truth where everyone can hear it until you have no choice." I stayed on my knees in the mud for a long time after she sank back into the lake, watching the water ripple and then go still again, like she'd never been there. My phone was still lying in the mud, screen cracked but somehow still working, and when I picked it up, I had a new voicemail. From myself, my own voice, recorded, saying, "September 14th, 2014, Mercy Lake. I drowned my daughter Lily because she was going to tell my wife about my affair. I weighted her body with rocks and left her at the bottom of the lake. I've been lying about it for 10 years. The recording was crystal clear, no static, impossible to deny. I drove home in a daze, knowing what I had to do, but desperately trying to find another option. Any option. Maybe I could say the recording was fake, that someone was trying to frame me. Maybe I could run, disappear, start over somewhere else. Maybe I could finally do what I should have done 10 years ago and drive myself into Mercy Lake with rocks tied to my own ankles. When I got home, Audrey was waiting up, worry etched on her face. "Where were you?" she asked. "It's 3 a.m. I was about to call the police. I went to Mercy Lake," I admitted. I needed to go back there." Audrey's expression shifted from worry to something harder. "Why would you go there in the middle of the night?" I could feel it building in my chest. The truth I'd been holding back for a decade. The confession Lily's ghost had demanded. The words started coming out before I could stop them, everything spilling out in a rush. The affair with Rachel, Lily finding the phone, the drive to the lake, the rocks, the way she'd struggled, how long it took, where I'd left her body. Audrey listened to all of it with her face getting paler and paler, her hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter so tight her knuckles went white. When I finished, the silence was deafening. "You killed her," Audrey finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "You killed our daughter, and then you let me grieve for 10 years thinking she'd been taken by a stranger. You let me blame myself for letting her walk to school alone. You used her death to build your career. You stood at her memorial service and cried, and the whole time you knew exactly where she was." "I'm sorry," I said, but the words sounded hollow even to me. I was scared, and I panicked, and I made a horrible mistake. Audrey laughed, but there was no humor in it. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. You committed murder. You murdered our 7-year-old daughter because it was convenient. She pulled her phone from her pocket. I'm calling the police. Wait, I said, reaching for her, but she stepped back like I was venomous. Don't touch me, she hissed. Don't ever touch me again. You're a monster. She dialed 911, and I didn't try to stop her. What was the point? Lily was right. This was always where it was going to end. Detective Morrison arrived within 20 minutes, along with 3 other officers. He read me my rights while Audrey sobbed on the couch, refusing to even look at me. They found the recording on my phone, my own confession, clear as day. They searched my computer and found old emails with Rachel, found the burner phone hidden in my office, found a decade of lies carefully preserved. Morrison asked if I wanted a lawyer before we talked, and I said no. I told them everything. Every detail Lily's ghost had made me remember. The drive to the lake, the rocks I'd found by the shore, the way I'd told her it was a breath-holding game, how long I'd had to hold her under, where exactly I'd left her body. They organized a dive team for the morning, and by noon, they'd recovered what was left of her. The medical examiner confirmed the rocks tied to her ankles, the evidence of drowning, everything exactly as I'd described. The case that had been cold for 10 years was suddenly solved, and the hero father was actually the killer all along. The trial was brief. I pled guilty to murder and gave up my right to appeal. There wasn't much point in fighting it with the evidence they had, with my recorded confession, with my own testimony. The prosecution painted me as a monster who'd killed his child to hide an affair, who'd then exploited her death for a decade of fame and sympathy. They weren't wrong. My lawyer tried to argue mental health issues, temporary insanity, suggested I'd had some kind of breakdown that morning, but the jury saw through it. Premeditation was written all over what I'd done, from the rocks to the location, to the perfect cover story I'd maintained for years. They convicted me in less than 3 hours, and the judge sentenced me to life without parole. Audrey divorced me before the trial even ended, filed papers and refused to attend any hearings. I don't blame her. Rachel moved away and changed her name, trying to distance herself from the scandal. The Missing Children's Foundation erased me from their history, scrubbed my face from their website, returned donations I'd helped raise. Everything I'd built collapsed in a matter of weeks. I'm writing this from prison, where I'll spend the rest of my life. The calls stopped after my arrest, after I told the truth like Lily's ghost had demanded. My phone was taken as evidence anyway, but even before that, the morning calls at 6:47 had finally gone silent. Sometimes I wonder if it was real, if my daughter's spirit actually haunted me from the bottom of Mercy Lake, or if my guilt finally broke through the walls I'd built around it and manifested as the only thing that could force me to confess. The psychologist they make me see says it was a psychotic break, that the stress of maintaining the lie for a decade finally fractured my mind and created the hallucination of Lily calling me, that the anniversary approaching triggered a complete psychological collapse that made me confess to something I'd successfully hidden for years. Maybe he's right. Maybe there was no ghost, no dripping corpse standing at the water's edge, no supernatural revenge. Maybe it was just my brain's way of making me face what I'd done. But sometimes, late at night in my cell, I hear my daughter's voice. Not through a phone this time, but in the walls, in the pipes, in the air itself. "Thank you for telling the truth, Daddy," she whispers. "Thank you for finally letting me rest." And I know, with absolute certainty, that Lily was real, that she crawled out of that lake every night for 10 years, trying to find her way home, trying to make me acknowledge what I'd done to her, that she haunted me with those calls until I had no choice but to confess. The living can lie and hide and pretend, but the dead don't forget. They wait, they watch, they find ways to make the truth surface, no matter how deep you've buried it. I drowned my daughter to keep a secret, and my daughter came back from drowning to make sure that secret couldn't stay hidden forever. That's justice, I suppose. Cold and terrible and exactly what I deserved. I just wish I'd been brave enough to tell the truth 10 years ago, before Lily had to claw her way out of Mercy Lake to make me. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.